Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I think it's probably evening for Marie. It's morning for me. I am the founder and CEO of Civility Partners. We focus on building positive work environments, and we spend a lot of time in kind of toxic, unhappy environments, and we turn those around. Today, I've got Marie Hemingway with me. Thank you so much for spending your evening with me, Marie.
Absolutely.
So Marie is one of the founders of Speak Out Revolution, which is an award-winning not-for-profit on a mission to cancel the culture of silence. And they say workplace bullying is a silent epidemic. I see that phrase a lot. And of course, harassment is another place where people tend to keep quiet. So she's working on trying to solve real world challenges experienced across our networks with respect to unresolved concerns and complaints. So she's got a global anonymous survey, which I'm going to ask all about, a global open source dashboard. She's doing big things. So thank you so much for joining me.
Absolute pleasure to join you. Always happy to talk about the work that we're doing at Speak Out Revolution.
Yeah, I feel the same. Happy to sign up to talk about something I'm passionate about. So tell me first, just tell me more about your nonprofit, how it started, how long have you been around? Give us some insight.
Yeah, absolutely. So Speak Out Revolution is about 2 years old now. Francis and I founded Speak Out during the pandemic, essentially off of the back of multiple concerns that were being raised from initially women across our personal and professional networks. So both of us have worked in the engineering sector and come from STEM backgrounds for the last decade. And we were seeing an increased conversation, let's say, within organizations in our sector around ED&I and around women in STEM. And yet there wasn't really any alignment to the conversation and actions they were taking. And that was really manifesting as women having challenges in the workplace that were being ignored or not resolved. And essentially they were being forced out of their organizations and sometimes the sector to everyone's detriment. And Speak Out Revolution was initially a proof of concept to help a close friend and connection try and resolve her particular challenges, which then turned out to be lots of people's particular challenges, which now turns out to be everybody's global challenge. And so we launched our global survey, made it open and accessible to everyone. We launched our dashboard, essentially a business intelligence tool, so that everybody could understand what the problem actually looks like and take actions in their sector or geography that, with the limited resources, I would say, that the organizations have, to actually make the biggest impact rather than just have conversations about how they care about ED&I. We want people to actually do things that help people who are systemically excluded.
Yeah. So you're saying that women are discriminated against in STEM. No, I'm just kidding.
It's not just women. It's not just STEM. It's everywhere.
Sure.
Bias, prejudice, discrimination exists.
Yes.
All genders, sexual. I mean, it's everywhere. It's such a large problem.
During the height of the Me Too movement, I did a talk on harassment and creating an environment that doesn't tolerate that for a group called Vistage. That's based here in San Diego, and they are basically a CEO mastermind group where CEOs can talk to other CEOs about their trials and tribulations, and they do a conference every year. So I spoke, and I remember I'm kind of talking about all this stuff, and one guy kind of raises his hand. He's like, I just feel like this is a big company problem. Most of us here in the audience, our companies are maybe 50 employees to 200 employees. And the stuff you're saying, I don't think that happens. And it was so funny. This other woman, she just pops right out of her seat and she goes, this is an everywhere problem. Ask anybody you know. Every single one of us has either experienced a harassment, observed it, or we know somebody who has. And she just kind of laid into him. And he was kind of like, okay, hadn't thought about it that way. Indeed, it is everywhere. And I feel like, my niche is workplace bullying specifically. We work with harassment situations as well, but I kind of feel like 100% of us have dealt with bullying in some way, just because every time I tell people what I do, they have a story, 100% of the people I talk to.
I would say, and it's an interesting observation actually, when people find out the work that we do at Speak Out Revolution, because Speak Out is my voluntary role, I have a day job as well. But when people find out in conversation, I would say 90% of the people that I interact with just in my everyday life that find out, they have a story, they know a friend, and I think this is a big part of the problem, that people think that these are one-off instances. That's an anomalous result. These aren't trends. What we see in the newspapers is it's a really extreme case, and it's just not. It's
Right.
everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere, and we really set out to gather the data on it in a way that everybody could use to say, it's not just me that's been impacted, or it's not just my friend that's been impacted, and it's not just sector specific. Yes,
Yeah.
the challenge maybe changes based on sector, but here are the high level trends, and don't tell me that this doesn't exist, because we've got at Speak Out Revolution, we now have over 1,000 experiences that populate our dashboard, that mean that it's very hard for people to say, well, that doesn't happen here. That doesn't happen in my sector.
Right.
It does. It does. You just don't know it.
Right. And I've had plenty of clients too, where another example, a woman came forward with her experiences of harassment, discrimination, bullying, all of the above. It was IT, which is also very male dominated. And then some other women came forward. So they, hired us to dig into it more and understand it. And there were so many people that we interviewed as part of our, discovery, who either knew about it and were so appalled that it had been allowed to go on this long, because it wasn't just those 5 women, obviously. And then there were several others we interviewed who were like, I had no idea this was going on, but now that I know, I'm, devastated that this is what's been going on in my workplace. And so, yeah, it was an interesting dichotomy, I guess, that they and I guess I was touched too, that the people who didn't know but now knew were so sad, and really wanted to make sure that this got resolved. So tell us about the dashboard. What's that? Uh-oh, you froze for me.
Oh,
there we go.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm back. I'd love to know if those people who were sad actually took action to resolve the situations of those individuals. And I'd also love to know how satisfied those individuals were with the experiences, which comes nicely to the question actually that you asked about our dashboard. The Speak Out dashboard, which is freely available to everyone, source our insights. We want everybody to have the data that they need for their geography, their sector, to drive effective change that helps us deliver our vision and our mission. So the dashboard essentially presents, it's a business intelligence tool. It presents insights on the lived experiences of people who have tolerated harassment and bullying in the workplace. It documents their route to resolution and the outcomes that they've achieved. And we're seeing very consistent trends in terms of people's experiences across sectors and geographies. And I guess, the phrase that I would use or the phrase that I like to use to describe the high level insights we see is, organizations today, our best practice processes and policies are not solving the problem of workplace harassment and bullying. They are silencing targets. And it just allows the problem to perpetuate, and it makes it harder for people like myself and Fran, who really care about, gender diversifying our sector, to achieve that, because we have this silent epidemic that you've talked about that are forcing systemically excluded groups out. And that's what we're looking to change.
Yeah. I wish I'd known you about a month ago, because I don't know if you've heard of this, but the International Association on Workplace Bullying and Harassment I think you would, I don't know if you know about them, but you should join and present this all at the next conference, which will be in 2 years somewhere in the world.
Well, I was aware of the conference, and I did see it was in San Diego because I know Nikki at Conduct Change, and I was like, I would love to go to San Diego and
Well,
present
you
something.
could have attended virtually. I'll yell at you later. I'm looking at your dashboard right now, and it's very cool. And I love that anybody can add their experience, and then you can sort it by all sorts of different things. So I'm happy to help you collect data, because the more people who fill it out, the more impactful it will be when people are using it for a business case. So, and I agree. I mean, here in America, some of the trends have been the EEOC, which is our, who manages the federal government's department, or the complaints about harassment and things. They came out in 2016 with a report saying training doesn't work. And I'm like, duh. And they talked about culture, but yet nothing's happened with that. I mean, no, California still requires training, but why aren't we saying, okay, the EEOC says that's not working. Maybe we need to start requiring certain kinds of cultures. And it's unfortunate because I think we get too much in our heads about it, or legislatures do, where they start saying things like, we can't regulate people having a bad day. We're kind of allowed to be uncivil, but it is what it is. But it's like, nobody's saying that. But other countries like France require a dignified work environment, essentially, or organizations are required to have a space that's free from psychological harassment, as they call it, which is kind of the workplace bullying version. So it's like there's all this research out there that what can work, and nobody's doing anything with it. And of course, I shouldn't have a job. I shouldn't. It boggles my mind that this is what I do for a living.
It's really interesting. I always talk about in the UK. Oh no, did I freeze again? Sorry, I thought I froze. In the UK specifically, I always say that I kind of think the law or our legislation is actually a big part of the problem, because that's what organizations look to tick the box.
Right.
And really they think about this problem, or in the UK at least, in terms of, have we met the legal minimum? Are we exposing ourselves to legal risk if we don't do this training or do this thing? And actually, for our work at Speak Out Revolution, we're very focused on not too closely associating ourselves with legislation, with being compliant. Like, we're not interested in the compliance space, right? That is such a low bar. People can have horrible working experiences and organizations can be compliant. We really want to push the employee experience perspective. If you want an organization that is innovative, that you have people bringing their best ideas, where you have diversity of thought driving your revenues, you have to be thinking about employee experience. And that's really where we want to be, or the spirit of the work that we are doing, I would say.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. Here in California, we're required by law, if you have 5 or more employees, you have to do that anti-harassment training. And exactly, because the learning objectives essentially were made up by the government, they're governmental types of learning objectives, to define sexual harassment from a legal standpoint, all that stuff. And that's not useful. If I'm a manager and I observe something, I'm not like, does that match that definition I learned, a year and a half ago? It's the employee experience. So we've done our best at Civility Partners to redo the harassment prevention training, and we meet a lot of the legal wickets that you have to hit, so it is compliant via a handout. And then the training itself is like all of the interpersonal stuff. How do you get the courage to speak up? How do you and so it's I'm with you, the bar is very low. And we, unfortunately, what we see is we get called in for culture change when something's
Yes.
hit the fan, right? And it's not companies that are like, we really want to have a great innovative work environment. It doesn't make sense because employee experience is a hot topic right now in HR, and then somehow we separate that from anti-harassment. It's like, here's a check the box training,
Yes.
and then we're going to tout our employee experience. And it's like, no, they're a little bit related. You have to say, we don't tolerate harassment and we take this training seriously. And it's got to be part of a much bigger picture, not, here, you have to take this in your first 2 days of working here because we need to make sure we tick the box.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we really talk about we talk about our work, or we talk about bullying and harassment as a fundamental barrier to creating an inclusive workplace, which is what everybody, at least in the UK, is talking about, how inclusive they are, because they're recognizing that the next generation of talent really care about working for organizations that are inclusive, and rightly so. And they're doing a lot of, I would say, performative things like buying awards, putting black squares on their social media, but actually it doesn't really line up often with the experiences or the actions that they're taking. And they're definitely not measuring the outcomes that they're achieving in this space, which ultimately for me is the true assessment. What do people say on the ground? What are the people on the ground that are more likely to be impacted by this problem saying about working for your organization? Well, you don't know because you're not measuring it, because you don't want to know the answer, because you're too busy buying awards to demonstrate that you're really good, without actually asking any of your employees, which is one of the big challenges I think we have here in the UK, at least.
Yeah, same here. So if I am an employee working somewhere and I'm feeling harassed and I fill out this survey, how can I, bring that into my organization, or what are my next steps?
Sure. So there's a couple of different things that individuals can do, or how Speak Out Revolution can support them. We're primarily looking at driving strategic change, which is why we ask for people where they can to share their experience anonymously with us from anywhere around the world. And we're using that data in lots of different ways. So when someone shares their experience with us, we're supporting organizations pro bono that are delivering global campaigns like the Can't Buy My Silence campaign, looking to ban non-disclosure agreements. We're supporting now an organization in Canada, Shop Workplaces, that are looking to change legislation in their space. So we're working with lots of kind of third-party campaign organizations that are driving change and using that data to feed all of those activities. For an individual, though, we also offer, we recognize that people are going through difficult times. So we have Colleen. So Colleen is a member of our team, a voluntary member of our team, that is a listening ear for anybody who has recognize that they have a bad experience. They can get in touch with Colleen. She'll set up a confidential anonymous call. It's free of charge, and she'll walk people through kind of their experience and put them in touch with others that might be able to help, either in the pro bono legal space, or she'll share insights of what we're seeing to help people better navigate their experiences. And we have a bunch of resources that we have to support individuals. One thing that we are seeing actually is individuals are starting to, when they hear of people in their organization having challenges, either themselves or others, are starting to put Speak Out Revolution into the, passing along our
channels or things.
Are dropping us into those channels. And we are working with organizations. We typically, the way that we would like to work with organizations is more proactively. So, we want to be talking to organizations that are saying, we want to be really good in this space. We want to be inclusive. Help us understand what this challenge looks like. We want to integrate it into our ED&I programs, and we want to take action aligned with our sector that is going to productively and constructively drive this in a positive way. That's what we want to be. We offer talks to introduce our global insights into that setting and help people understand actions that they can individually take. We also consult with organizations that are recognizing that, like every organization out there, there are challenges that exist because bias, prejudice, discrimination exists in society, and it doesn't go away when you go to work. And so we don't work with every organization we talk to, I will say. We work with organizations that we think that we can help drive impact in the right way. And we will consult with them, help them understand what the experiences of their employees are in a very safe way,
Mm-hmm.
and provide strategic insight and recommendations. So all of these things are available. We really want people to just do it themselves, to self-serve from our dashboard, because you can kind of get everything that you would need from the open source insights as they are. And for us to drive impact and reach, we want people to be self-serving and taking action themselves, and kind of, I don't want to say keeping Speak Out Revolution out of it, but keeping us out of it to a certain extent, because we're completely voluntary and we are limited in our resources, right? And we want everybody to solve this problem with the nuances that are required and the understanding that is required of particular cultures in sectors and organizations around the world.
Yes.
So we want to give them the data to do that.
Yeah, very nice. That's looks like we're very much aligned in the types of things that we are doing. I love it. So tell me, we're almost out of time here. What's the most startling thing you've seen in your dashboard?
There's so many. I'm just looking at the time. Okay, I can probably get one or two in. So the things that I find startling are the things that I just don't see people talking about in everyday life that really stand out. So I guess number one on my list is the abuse of non-disclosure agreements in cases of workplace harassment and bullying.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing around 1 in 4 people who enter into a formal process with an organization will end up signing some form of agreement, a non-disclosure agreement, a disparagement agreement, or something else, which essentially silences or limits their ability to talk about their experience. Incredibly damaging, psychologically,
Mm-hmm.
and epitomizes the problem of silencing targets of workplace harassment and bullying, not solving the problem that exists.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess as a second layer of that, early insights show that disproportionately, at almost 3 times the rate, Black women compared to white counterparts are being silenced with non-disclosure agreements. So essentially, the intersection of racism and sexism built into the very procedures that are there to protect, which is one thing that we're working on with the and we're amplifying through the Can't Buy My Silence campaign. The second thing, and this will be my last one, is the outcomes that we see for particular demographics.
Mm-hmm.
So for when we look at our data and say what protected characteristic of an individual most influences an individual's ability to get a good outcome when they formally report, it's how disabled you are. So what we see is for people who are limited a lot by disability, irrelevant of the unfair treatment that they are reporting in their workplace, and actually the leading thing that people are reporting is sexism.
Right.
They are 10 times more likely for their situation to get worse after formally reporting than better, right, which is much, much worse than average. And so, I interpret it as ableism, and I don't know where it kind of comes from. But for me, it's almost the real standout problem that no one is talking about, absolutely no one, and no one's gathering data on this to even understand whether or not having a disability influences your access to resolution, which it clearly does from our data. And so there are a couple of things that have really kind of systemic, ingrained, hidden challenges that no one is really looking at or trying to understand or even aware of.
Well, that's why you should have been at my conference. That's where all the researchers are. And so, I'm sure they would be happy to answer your call for research. That for me, this was such an epiphany when I got into this world in 2009. I started Civility Partners in 2009. I guess I got in around 2005. But the reading 40 years of academic research from around the world on the topics of harassment and bullying and just was reading all of this research thinking, oh my gosh, that's my experience. That's what I'm going through right now. So there is so much research out there on these topics, which again, boggles my mind that organizations and the law, the legislatures, government aren't looking at those things. They're just like, oh, training will solve it. And then there's still so many holes in the research too. So it sounds like you have found one of those holes. So, well, thank you so much, Marie. I really appreciate it. I put your website there in the chat for anybody who comes along to watch our video later. And, you know, everybody gets your stories in there. The more data she's got, the more useful that tool is. So thank you again.
And I'll just finish by saying, I don't want to miss the opportunity, Catherine, to say, if you have researchers that are looking for data, we are always, we are very, you know, open to sharing our data with anybody that is looking at understanding the challenges that exist so that we can make organizations do things differently.
Yeah.
So very open to that for sure.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And it was really great to chat with you. It was nice to meet people who think just like you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Lovely to chat. And thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you.